Hi everyone as well from Bill and Jessica from Question Immigration. I think what we'll do, Jessica, I think we'll get the ball started because we'll
Mhm.
send all the applicants, all the participants, a whole bunch of information. So whoever missed out in some information
Mhm.
earlier on, who jumps in a bit later, we can update them with emails and whatnot. So
Mhm.
yeah, thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. So today we're going to focus on live and work in Australia with a sponsored visa. I hope everyone is safe and well. I know Sydney and Melbourne, uh, you know, have been in an extensive long lockdown, and also we had an earthquake in Melbourne today. So I hope everyone's safe. Um, yeah, crazy times, but the show must go on, and I guess everyone here in Australia, lucky to be in Australia, whichever visa you're on. And what we'll try to do today is explain how employer-sponsored visas work. A little bit about Questra Immigration. So we founded in 2016. Got offices in Melbourne. However, we cater for clients all around Australia and all around the world, in fact. So it's not a problem whatsoever. We're centered upon honesty, also professionalism, and really a genuine passion for helping people. And that resonates across our team. So from myself as um, uh, the lead migration agent, and also through our migration coordinators, Lena Ortiz and Jessica is with us today. Um, and also Anna Ray, who's helped put this presentation and seminar series and live series together, um, which has been uh, very. One second, guys. Is there a bit of noise coming through there, Jessica?
Very mild. It's not very loud.
Okay, I might just put my speakers on. Just bear with me 1 minute, guys. Awesome. Okay. All right. So obviously we also speak Spanish and also English. My language is English, but both my migration coordinators, Jessica and Lena, their mother tongue is Spanish. So we also have consultations. We have the opportunity, if pre-organized, that we can have one of the girls participate. So that's not an issue either. Um, so a little bit about myself. Um, I'm registered for 4 years as oh, well, 5 years now actually, as a registered migration agent with the Omara. Obviously, we've done hundreds of applications, which include student visas, many sponsorship visas across many disciplines, partner visas, skilled, and also graduate visas. So nothing gives us more, I guess, joy and satisfaction than nurturing a client, from student visa, whether it be studying ALICOS at the start, then sort of forging a study pathway, then onto the graduate visa, where after that they could either apply for general skilled migration or employer sponsorship. So nothing gives us more sort of satisfaction than seeing that journey, I guess, from A to Z. And it's happened on numerous occasions, and that's what gives us most satisfaction. I'm also a member of the Migration Institute of Australia, and that's the peak body for registered migration agents or professional migration agents in Australia, and qualified education counsellor, and that's from my education agency background as well. So, we like to think of ourselves as primarily a migration agency. However, we're also the authority on, in-demand trades, and how to, I guess, uh, uh, formulate migration plans, which lead study pathways, which lead to permanent residency. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the 4 different sponsorship visas. So primarily, it's going to be the training visa, uh, also employer sponsorship, temporary short skilled TSS subclass 482 visa, um, the employer nomination scheme visa, direct entry we'll focus on today, which is the subclass 186, and also the regional employer sponsored visa, which is the subclass 494. So we'll get into primarily what we're going to talk about is the requirements for the applicants, and it's going to be a high level sort of overview of what are the requirements for the applicants, because if we get into the employer's I guess requirements, there's always it could be 3 or 4 applications involved. Well, there are some questions that some participants have asked about the employer requirements, so we'll answer those in the Q&A just shortly after we finish the slideshow. All right, so training visa, basically there's 3 different applications which need to be processed. From a business perspective, the company or the employer needs to apply to become a temporary activity sponsor. Right, so that's similar to requirements to becoming a standard business sponsor for the TSS visa. So basically what the government wants to see is that the business is a going concern, it's lawfully operating, and so forth. I'd just like to note about what type of businesses can be a temporary activity sponsor. It's important to note that most type of business structures can. One, however, that can't, and does pop up from time to time, are sole traders. So sole traders are ineligible to become a temporary activity sponsor. Therefore, they can't nominate a trainee. So, if you're working for a sole trader, this particular option will not be applicable to you. After the business becomes a temporary activity sponsor, then they need to nominate the trainee. This is probably the trickiest part of the whole process, because we need to submit a customized training plan, which is unique to the individual, to the applicant. So we do a bit of a skills gap analysis, and then we formulate a training plan, a very comprehensive training plan that we submit together with the nomination. And depending on how long that training plan is, so that will also dictate how long the visa validity will be for. So if the training plan goes for 12 months, then the visa will also go for 12 months. If the training plan goes for 24 months, then the visa will be also valid for 24 months. Third stage, after temporary activity sponsorship and nomination application, is the actual visa application of the trainee. Okay, so, and we'll go into the next slide to see what are the requirements, or the eligibility requirements to apply for a training visa. So the main, I guess, there's 3 streams of the training visa, but the main purpose is for trainees to undergo occupational training or professional development in Australia. You can be onshore or offshore when you make this type of application. And the eligibility requirements include that you need to have worked 12 months full-time in the nominated occupation in the previous 24 months immediately prior to lodging your training visa application. This could be pro rata as well. So in the last 2 years, if you've worked part-time, so for example, if you're working as a carpenter in the 2 years preceding to your training visa application, you've worked part-time, then that 2 years translates to 12 months full-time, and that means that you'd be eligible to apply for the training visa. You also need to have functional English, right? So functional English is 4.5. Basically, it's pretty simple to get functional English. So if you think, for a graduate visa, you need 6 overall. For an employer sponsorship visa, you need 5 overall. And for functional English, when we're talking about IELTS, it's 4.5. just on that, I would also like to show, for example, on our website, we have all the different types of English requirements and the scores that you require. And we'll be sending everyone links to all these relevant pages on our website so you can source the information yourself. So when we look at functional English, the requirement for IELTS is 4.5. For TOEFL, it's 32. For PTE, it's 30. And for Cambridge, it's 147. So it's substantially less, for example, than vocational English and even competent English. So vocational English is 5, and then competent English is 6. It's one of the requirements that you need, for example, to apply for skilled migration. So yeah, achieving the score of 4.5 shouldn't be too much of a challenge for most students. As part of the application also, we need to identify a mentor in the business who has a relevant education and employment background to train you and to follow the training plan. So for example, if you're, again, I'll use the example of a carpenter. If you're training to be a carpenter, then you'd have to have someone within the business who's a qualified carpenter, possibly even a registered builder, and basically would have to send the Department of Immigration all their credentials, so their CV showing their experience and all their employment background. Would also have to include any educational certificates, any registrations, to validate that the person within the business training you is actually suitably qualified to be doing that training. So, and as discussed earlier, the business also has to create a training program which is tailored to your unique training needs. Now, I'd just like to add also regarding the full-time experience. This could be either a qualification or work experience. So it doesn't necessarily need to be work experience. It also can include qualification. So again, if you've studied a certificate 3 in carpentry, which goes for 1 year, then you could also apply for the training visa. You probably wouldn't if you're on a student visa, because you would apply for the graduate visa. But yeah, just pointing out that full-time experience extends to qualification as well, and it also includes work experience and qualification. So what does it allow you to do? As I said earlier, it allows you to stay for up to 24 months. However, it can be for less. It will depend on how long your training plan is, which is the relevant list. So your occupation needs to be on the 407 list, which is quite an expansive list. And basically, it's a combination of the regional occupation list, the medium to long-term list, and the short-term list. Again, with the training visa, there's no occupation-specific caveats. So there's no minimum TISMIT. So the salary can be less than 53,900. It just has to be according to the award minimum wage for that particular occupation. So, if you're doing a hospitality occupation, then we look at the hospitality industry award. And if you're doing a trade occupation, then we look at the relevant award, et cetera, et cetera. Some features or advantages of the training visa is, I guess you can use the training visa as a stepping stone to a TSS visa or even a general skilled migration visa. You can use the work experience as a pathway to also get a positive skills assessment and to accumulate work experience again. So they're the main advantages. So I would say, if someone can't meet the requirements of a TSS visa, and we'll look at the requirements of that in the next slides, then a training visa is a really good option. There's less sort of bureaucracy and red tape for your employer as well. You don't have to advertise the position. like you do with the TSS visa. Like I said, there's no TISMET minimum. Your occupation doesn't, your salary doesn't need to be 53,900, and also, there's no, if there's someone in the Australian citizen or permanent resident working in that organisation, you don't necessarily need to be paid the same. You just need to be paid at least the award minimum rate. So sometimes employers, it could be an easier sell if you're pitching for an employer sponsorship visa. The conditions are similar to any other employer sponsorship visa. Once you're on a training visa, you can only work for the company that has nominated you, and that's a condition of the visa. Yeah, it's definitely a good option, especially for those who would be looking to use to gain some more work experience to then be eligible for some other work, temporary or even a permanent work visa. All right, so and just on that as well, I guess there's a whole heap of information that you can find on our website regarding the training visa as well. And you can see here on our website, there's all information on all the types of visas, also the training visa as well. And you can have a look at what are the requirements for your employer, and also what are the requirements, the application process, the 3 different streams, some common questions there, application fees, potential pathways and whatnot. And like any type of sponsorship visa, how it usually works with our agency is, what we usually do is we get the applicant to book an appointment, and then we sort of do an assessment, and then if we see that you fulfill the requirements of whichever employer sponsorship visa it is, what we usually do then is I'm happy to jump on a call with your employer. It doesn't need to be a formal appointment or anything like that, and sort of discuss with him, what's the application process, what the costs are, and so forth. So usually the applicant will book an appointment. We check off to see that they fulfill the eligibility requirements, and then basically we take it from there to liaise with your employer, and we can do that over a phone call, over a Zoom call, whatever is I guess easiest for them. So the next visa we're going to look at is a TSS visa. So the temporary skills shortage TSS visa, subclass 482. The application for this particular subclass pertains 3 different processes. From business perspective, it's standard business sponsorship, and once approved, the business will have a standard business sponsorship for 5 years, where they can nominate unlimited amount of overseas or foreign workers. Then there's a nomination application, which is again probably the trickiest part. So with the TSS, it also involves labour market testing. So we need to advertise the position in 3 different mediums, and mandatorily on the government's Job Active website. And we also need to, I guess, justify why the nominee is the best applicant. Also, there's a genuine position requirement, which is to ensure that the position actually fits within the scope of the business. So there's a submission that we do, that we work with your employer to generate there. Also, so there's a couple of, I guess, hoops to jump through with the nomination. But again, it's something that we work with your employers. Also financial capacity, financial reports to demonstrate that the business is a going concern and has a capacity to pay the nominee the salary that's been indicated in the employment contract. Again, there's, like we said earlier, there's a TISMET, which is the minimum salary that the applicant needs to get paid. 53,900 is the minimum plus superannuation. However, we also need to justify the salary. So if you're a mechanical engineer, then we can't submit a salary of 53,900. We also have to look at the Australian salary market rate. So what we do is we look at SEEK, remuneration surveys to justify your salary. So, at the moment, we're doing a couple of mechanical engineers and the salaries between 65,000 and 75,000. And that's no problem because, we can source plenty of ads on job portals. There's also remuneration surveys, so we can justify the salary. The third step is the visa application, right? And this can be in any of two streams. So, sorry, just lost that now. So it could be in the short-term stream and in the long-term stream. So when we talk about short-term stream and long-term stream, there's two occupation lists, right? And you can see both lists on our website. So this is a short-term stream. So it's the short-term strategic list, and you can see there. So these occupations are deemed, I guess, not as much in demand as the medium long-term occupation lists. And we can have a look at a sample of the medium to long-term list as well. And you can have a look at all these occupations on our website. Now, depending on the stream that you apply for, will determine how long your visa is, and also if you'll have a permanent residency pathway. So the eligibility requirements for a visa application is that you've got 2 years of full-time relevant work experience, either in your occupation or a closely related occupation. That's got to be post-qualification, right? So if you're a skill level 1 industrial engineer, you've completed a bachelor degree in industrial engineering, you've got to have additional 2 years work experience post your bachelor degree completion date. Otherwise, you've got to meet the ANSCO requirements for the nominated occupation. Now, for a skill level 1 occupation, to substitute the need of having a bachelor degree plus 2 years work experience, if you don't have a bachelor degree, you're going to need to have 5 years work experience as an industrial engineer. Now, if we're looking at a skill level 2, for example, a chef, which the ANSCO is a diploma, then you'll require 3 years of work experience to substitute having the diploma plus 2 years work experience. So depending on which skill level you are, will determine, how many, if you haven't got a qualification, how many years work experience you'll require. So usually, usually we're able to determine that in our initial consultation, and it's not necessarily a problem either way. Now, meeting English requirements for the relevant stream. So basically, and this is time of application. So for the short-term stream, you need equivalent to an average of 5 in IELTS, so overall score of 5 with no score under 4.5 in any of the 4 bands. And in the medium-term stream, you need a minimum score of 5 of IELTS and an average of 5. Okay, so that's the key difference there with the English requirements. So with the medium to long-term stream, the English requirements are a little bit higher. The short-term occupation list for the short-term stream and the medium to long-term occupation for the medium to long-term stream. Features of the short-term stream: the visa can only be renewed once onshore. So it's a 2 + 2 year visa and it can only be renewed once. Provides limited pathways for employer-sponsored permanent residence. So if you're on a TSS employer-sponsored visa in the short-term stream, the only way you can achieve permanent residency is through general skilled migration, which is the state-sponsored 190, or the regional 491 visa. or employer-sponsored regional visa 494. And again, you'd have to be in a regional area. And to have a look at, we'll have a look at that later actually, because we'll look at the designated regional areas later as well. The features of the medium to long-term stream. Obviously, as we said, English requirements are a little bit higher compared to the short-term stream. The visa can be renewed without limitations, right? And also, you can transition to permanent residency after working for 3 years on a TSS visa for the same employer in your nominated occupation. So that's the main bonus of the medium to long-term stream. There's a pathway to permanent residency through an employer-sponsored visa. So that's a big plus. The next visa we'll look at is the employer-nominated scheme visa, subclass 186. For this application process, there's only a nomination and a visa application. So there's only 2 steps that are required for the nomination. We as an agency have been doing labour market testing because it was recommended after or post or during the pandemic. In saying that, I guess, we stick to that process because, the last, 8 or 9 186s that we've done have all been approved. So, if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it. So we continue. It's a little bit ultra conservative, but, we like to tick all the boxes and ensure that, we're doing the right thing. Again, within the nomination, the business has to provide all their registration documents and financials to ensure that they've got the capacity to pay the nominee. And the second step is the visa application. There's 2 ways you can do this. Depending on your visa end date, you can do the nomination initiate first, wait until it's approved and then apply for the visa, or depending on whether you've got a looming visa expiry date, we can apply at the same time for the nomination and the visa application. And this applies for all actually employer-sponsored visas. You can apply concurrently, whether it's temporary activity sponsorship, nomination, or training visa, or SBS, nomination, TSS visa. We can apply for all 3 applications at the same time. The requirements of the 186 visa are a little bit, I guess, difficult. This is because it's a permanent visa off the bat. So you've got to have an occupation on the medium to long term list. You've got to have at least 3 years relevant work experience, unless exempt. You've got to also have a positive skills assessment, unless exempt as well. You've got to be under 45 years of age before you apply for the 186 visa. And you also got to have competent English, right? So as opposed to the TSS visa, it's mandatory that you provide a skills assessment, a positive outcome, and 3 years work experience, again, has got to be post-qualification. If your work experience includes experience that's before your qualification, then we've got to show in total 6 years work experience. And it's what we do with a lot of chefs, for example, who get a recognition of prior learning post, I guess, accumulating 3 years work experience. But the flip side is that we have to show or demonstrate 6 years work experience. Work experience should be full-time. It should be in a nominated occupation or a closely related occupation. When we say closely related occupation, it's got to be within the same family of occupations. So if we look at, again, I'll go to our website, and if we look at, for example, if we look at civil engineers, for example, then your work experience has got to be within these related occupations. So where you can see it's got the first four digits, 2332. So that would include a geotechnical engineer, quantity surveyor, a structural engineer, or transport engineer. So if you're including work experience in any of those occupations, it will suffice. But so, for example, you will need to have 3 years work experience post qualification, and you also will have a skills assessment. So if you're a civil engineer, it would have to be from Engineers Australia, and you also have to have competent English at time of application. Like I said, it's a permanent visa, and the list must be from the medium to long-term list. So typically speaking, what's the pathway after permanent residency? So if someone's been on a temporary visa for 4 years, whether they've been on a student visa, graduate visa, TSS visa, and then they apply for permanent residency. After being 1 year as a permanent resident in Australia, you can apply for Australian citizenship. And we're just at that sort of, cycle of our business, because we've been going since 2016-17, where we're actually, our clients who have applied for permanent residency through the 186, direct entry, or TRT, we're now applying for Australian citizenship as well. We've actually had a couple that have already been granted citizenship. So it's definitely a solid pathway, and there's plenty of fruits of labour that we can demonstrate as well, live cases. So that's great. The last visa we'll look at is a skilled employer sponsored regional visa, subclass 494. I'll just say again, this is a provisional visa. So it's not a permanent visa. However, it does lead to permanent residency via the 191 visa, but we'll have a look at that in a few later slides. So process, the application includes 4 stages. So standard business sponsorship, similar to the TSS visa. Also, you need to do RCB advice, or regional certifying body advice. So each designated regional area has a certifying body. It's a similar sort of application to the nomination. There's a bit of overlapping there, but we need to get approval from the regional certifying body. Usually we do that step before we apply for the nomination, but again, it will depend on the visa end date of the client. So in an ideal world, we'd do regional certifying body advice, get approval, and then apply for the nomination. But 8 times out of 10, it doesn't happen like that, to be honest. And then we apply for nomination to the Department of Home Affairs. Again, that would entail advertising, Australian salary market rate, and genuine need submission, which we work closely with the employer to formulate those submissions. And then last but not least, visa application of the nominee. Eligibility requirements, again, can't have turned 45 at time of application, must have a skilled occupation on an applicable list, right? So the applicable list for this particular subclass is the regional occupation list. Let's have a look at that one. So over here, so there's a whole heap of occupations. Very expansive list, the regional list. It is a good option for anyone whose occupation features on the short-term list. But I guess you need to find a sponsor in a designated regional area, and to have a look at the designated regional area postcode list. Also, you can find that on our website. So, for example, New South Wales, anywhere but Sydney. and it's in two different groups. So Sydney cities and major regional centres, which would include Newcastle, Wollongong, and then regional centres and other regional areas. So these are all the so New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland, pretty much anywhere except for Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney, whereas South Australia includes all of South Australia, including Adelaide, Western Australia, all of Western Australia, including Perth. As we said, Queensland, it also, except for Brisbane, but it does include, for example, Gold Coast, Noosa, far north Queensland, Cairns, etc., etc. So you can check all that out on our resources section on the website. We'll be, like I said earlier, we'll be sending you all the relevant links for your information. Now, let's get back to the presentation. So again, similarly to the 186 direct entry visa, you've got to have 3 years of full-time experience at the required skill level for your nominated occupation. Again, it could include a related occupation. Also, you must have competent English, so 6 in each band from the get-go. So that, again, is time of application. So it's a provisional visa for up to 5 years. As we said, the list is on the regional occupation list, and you can transition to permanent residency, as we said, via the subclass 191 permanent resident skilled regional visa after holding a 494 visa for at least 3 years and have substantially complied with the conditions of the visa. The conditions, the main conditions are that you stay in a designated regional area. So you can switch between regional areas, but you can't move to Melbourne, Sydney, or Brisbane. Each year, you need to earn a minimum of 53,900 for 3 years. That can be if you're a combined application with your partner. That can be either partner, and we can also combine the incomes. The other thing is that you can't apply for many other visas whilst you're on the 494 visa, partner visa, any other skilled visa, and you can find that all information as well. What are the conditions? So there's quite extensive amount of conditions, more than any other visa, because the whole idea is that if you spend 3 or 4 years in a regional area before you transition to permanent residency, you would have built up a social network, obviously a professional network, and you might even have started a family. And you might, be entrenched in that community, and you're more likely to stay in that regional area for the foreseeable future, rather than, as soon as you get the permanent residency visa, move to a city like Melbourne, Sydney, or Brisbane. All right, so that concludes the presentation. I know it was a little bit extensive, and we covered quite a bit there. But what we'll do now is we'll move on to the questions, Jessica. And just for a bit of a change, and if people want to hear a different voice, we'll get you to ask the questions, and I'll provide the answers.
All right, so just before I start reading these questions, I see some hands, someone raising the hand. They can send me a message in the Q&A.
Yep.
And if we don't address the question here, we can ask that at the end, right?
Yes.
I'll see someone raising the hand. Okay, perfect. So this question by Catalina: how long should I work for the organization that sponsored me after the visa is approved?
Yeah, well, it depends how long your visa will be. Like we said, with the training visa, it will be for up to 24 months. With a TSS visa, it will be up to 2 years, with the option to extend for another 2 years. If it's a medium term, in the medium term stream, then it'll be up to 4 years. But after 3 years, you can transition to permanent residency. If you're over 45 and you can't apply for permanent residency because of the age barrier, then you can renew your medium to long-term stream TSS visa every 4 years. It would be a bit of a drag, but there's no age limit on the TSS visa. If it's a 186 visa, look, the reality is once a 186 visa is approved, you're a free agent. So there's nothing really stopping you from changing employers. That's why the 186 it's a bit of a trust thing, and it's a harder pitch. You've got to build that trust with your employer, because your employer knows as well that once the visa is approved, you're pretty much a free agent. Whereas a TSS visa, they know they're going to retain you for at least 3 to 4 years before you transition to PR. And for any employer, having a valuable employee for 4 years in this day and age is absolutely gold. So depending on the visa will dictate, subclass, will dictate how long the visa is and how long you have to work for your employer.
All right, next question. Salome is asking, what will happen if I finish my contract with the organization that is sponsoring me after getting my visa?
Again, it depends. If it's training visa, hopefully then you can apply for a TSS visa, because you would have accumulated the work experience requirement. If it's a TSS in the short term, to look for a PR option, you're either going to have to apply for a 491 or state-sponsored 190, but your occupation is going to have to be on the state that you're living in and working, or a 494, the regional employer-sponsored visa, where you'll have to find an employer in a designated regional area. If it's a 186, then there's a commitment to work for the next 2 years. But like I said, you're a free agent, so depends again on which visa. But I hope I've given a snapshot there of that answer for everyone.
All right, Nacho asked, can I change from a sponsor visa to a student visa at any time?
Absolutely, yeah. So look, with a sponsorship visa, obviously there's a condition where you can only work for your sponsor. For example, it happens quite a bit where you might get an offer from a different employer. In that particular instance, then provided it's in the same occupation, we just do a nomination transfer. If you want to revert back to a student visa, then by all means, a TSS sponsored visa is a substantive visa, so you can apply for a student visa. Obviously, you just got to be mindful of the GTE. Your motivation statement would have to articulate, why you're reverting back to a student visa, and you'll have to sort of navigate that carefully. But what happens also with sponsored visas is if your employer, for example, fires you, then you've got 60 days to find a new employer from the time they notify the department. Within that 60 days, you can definitely apply for a student visa if you're unable to find another sponsor. But once that 60 days lapses, you'll have a notification of intention to cancel your TSS visa. We actually saved one the other couple of weeks back. We had to do a submission, and we had some pretty influential people submit letters. But yeah, most definitely you can apply for a student visa. However, just be mindful, if you do apply for a student visa, you've got to be mindful of the processing times, because your student visa has got to be approved before the department cancels your TSS visa. Because even if you've got an application in process, a student visa in process, if they cancel your TSS visa, then you'll get a request for more information regarding to your student visa, and it'll ask, why have you breached, you've been more than 60 days without a sponsor. It's just tricky to navigate, but it is possible. But yeah, getting back to the question, I just thought I'd expand on it with a few different other scenarios. But yeah, whilst you're on a sponsored visa, you can definitely apply for a student visa.
Okay, Ricardo sent us the next question. Can I apply for the PR with the sponsor visa?
Yeah, 100%. So with the TSS visa, if your occupation is on the medium to long-term list, after 3 years, you can transition to PR. With the TRT, you've got to have worked for your sponsor in your nominated occupation on the TSS visa for 3 years. With the 186 direct entry visa, provided you fulfill the work experience requirements, you've got a positive skills assessment, and you meet the English requirements, and you have an employer that's prepared to nominate you, you can apply direct for a permanent residency visa. For the 494, you have to be on the 494 for at least 3 years, provided you can meet the requirements and abide by all the conditions of the 494, then you can apply for the 191, which is a permanent visa.
Okay, next question by Diana. What are the requirements of an organization to sponsor me?
Yeah, so depending on which subclass, but they're pretty similar in any case. But for the TSS visa, the organisation will have to show their business registration documents, organisational chart, their financials. They will also have to advertise a position in 3 different mediums for at least 28 days. They also have to show that the salary that they're offering you, if there's someone within the organisation that is an Australian citizen or permanent resident is performing the same role, you need to either get paid the same as them. If there isn't someone who's doing equivalent work that's an Australian citizen or permanent resident, then we need to demonstrate that you're getting paid the Australian salary market rate. What that includes is remuneration surveys, also job advertisements in the same city, in the same place, for the same position, full-time position. So for instance, today we lodged a nomination for a contract administrator. We showed remuneration surveys. We also showed 3-4 ads from Seek in Melbourne, showing a similar salary for full-time positions. The other thing that they'll need to show is you also need an employment contract, position description, and then also genuine position, showing that, demonstrating that the actual position fits within the scope of the business. So, if you're a mechanical engineer and you're being sponsored by a restaurant, we're not going to be able to show that it's a genuine position. So look, yeah, they're the main requirements of the business. They also need to pay a SAF levy. So depending on what the turnover of the business is, so if the business has got a turnover of under 10 million Australian dollars, then the SAF levy is 1,200 per year. If the business has a SAF, an annual turnover in the last financial year of more than 10 million, then the SAF levy, Skilling Australia Fund levy, is actually 1,800 per year. That's all got to be paid at the nomination stage, and it's paid up front. There are some provisions for refunds, very tight provisions, but yeah, the reality is, they're the main sort of requirements of an organisation who wants to sponsor an overseas worker.
The next question by Karen. What benefits will I have after getting my sponsored visa?
Well, yeah, depending on which visa, if it's a TSS visa, then you'll get a salary of at least 53,900 per year plus superannuation, at least for the next 2 years if it's a short-term stream, the next 4 years if it's a long-term stream. You'll also have full work rights. You'll also have full study rights while you're on a TSS visa. You also have the opportunity to include your family members, so your partner, any children if you have any. You'll also have the opportunity to accumulate work experience if you want to apply for a permanent residency visa. You will have to have maintain a health cover. So unlike a permanent visa, you will have to have overseas workers cover. It's a monthly fee, and you don't have to pay it up front like overseas student health cover, but you will need to maintain overseas health cover. They're the main benefits. If it's a 186 permanent visa, then you can enroll in Medicare, so you don't have to maintain private health insurance. You've got a permanent visa to live and work anywhere in Australia, and depending on how long you had a temporary visa, you can apply for citizenship shortly after. If it's a training visa, then you have the advantage of working full-time, albeit as a trainee, and accumulating work experience, either for a positive skills assessment to apply for another visa, or to accumulate work experience to then apply for a TSS visa, depending on which stream, will then lead to permanent residency.
Okay, next question by Jessica. Do I have to take an English test for my visa?
Absolutely, 100%. And depending on which visa subclass will depend on which score you'll need. But I know at the moment, especially if you're in Melbourne and Sydney, it's hard to take a test, but we've been doing 485s. We've lodged many in the last 1 or 2 months, and as long as we've got a booking receipt or a cancellation confirmation from the English test provider, we're able to still lodge visas even if the English requirement is time of application. What's happened within our practice, or what we've noticed, is that they just won't approve the visa until we actually upload the certificate. But yeah, you do need to provide English test for all employer-sponsored visas. For the training visa, you need functional English, which is equivalent to 4.5. For the TSS, depending on which stream, you need 5 overall, or 5 with no band less than 4.5. For the 186 permanent residency visa, you need 6 in each band. And for the 494 regional employer-sponsored visa, you need 6 in each band. And that requirement is time of application. So what that means is we have to upload the certificate at the same time we apply for your visa. Yep.
All right. So next question by Ingrid. How long does sponsor visa takes to be approved after applying?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ingrid. How long is a piece of string? Now, look, we do have some guidance. Depends. Recently, it depends on your occupation as well. Recently the government released the priority migration occupation list. So we have got some indication, and we've had 186s for chefs and civil engineers, and for mechanical engineers be approved nomination and visa within 3 months. So if we look at the migration, the priority migration occupation list, we can see, have I got that? We can see which occupations are being prioritized. And as we can see, this is applicable for all employer-sponsored visas. So the 494, 482 permanent visas, 186. And what it also means, if your occupation is on the priority list, is that apart from being, I guess, processed quicker, we're also able to get an exemption for offshore applications. So if you're a civil engineer and you've got a company that's prepared to sponsor you and you're overseas, we're able to get an exemption so you can come and fulfill that work contract. Same goes for electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and whole top, all the pharmacist occupations, all the nursing occupations, chef as well, social workers. So these will be processed quickly, and what we're finding is that they're processed within 3 to 4 months. The only thing that's holding us back at the moment, we've got about 4 or 5 priority occupations processing at the moment, and the only thing that's holding us back is the medicals, because the applicants are unable to actually sit medical exams. So the nomination's been approved within 2 months, and the visa application, all things being equal, we haven't had any request about the applicant's skills or qualifications or credentials. Basically, they've just said, please provide medicals and we'll approve your visa. However, if you do want to see if your occupation does not fit within the PM SOL, then the global processing times, for the 186, what they're saying is 7 to 10 months if you're not in a priority list. If you're applying for transition, they're saying 17 to 21 months. That's an awful long time. If we look at the 482, short-term stream, 77 days to 7 months. Medium stream, 4 months to 7 months. If you're, that's come down quite a bit. So if you're in a labour agreement stream, 4 months to 6 months. If for a standard business sponsorship application, it's 14 months to 14 days to 43 days. What we've seen with SBSs is that often we lodge them on a Friday, and on Monday we get the approval. So we're a little bit superstitious within our practice. So what we do is we usually apply for SBS on a Friday, and then on Monday we celebrate the approval. And the nomination, they're saying 35 days to 4 months. And what else is there? The 494, we can have a look. So they're saying 3 months to 5 months. And if it's in a labour agreement stream, there's no processing times available. So look, like I said, we'll send you all these links, right? So the key ones is the PM SOL, the English requirements, short-term occupation list, the regional occupation list, the medium to long-term occupation list, the designated regional areas. We also got the processing times as well on our website, and then also all the links to all the different types of employer-sponsored visas. We can have a look at specifically the requirements for each stage, so sponsorship, nomination, and also visa. So we'll send that all out to everyone registered and participated. But I'd just like to note out, if you could please keep an eye on your junk mail. We're not sure, we're trying to fix the problem, but we're finding that a lot of our emails are going into recipients' junk mail. So just look out in your junk mail for Question Immigration, any correspondence that we're sending you, newsletters, relevant links to today's webinar, offers, special offers, free assessments. Please keep an eye out on your junk mail. And also, I'd just like to say, if you look at employer-sponsored visas, they're becoming more important than ever. And that can be demonstrated by the allocation of visas in the migration planning. So employer-sponsored visas is 22,000 allocated, as opposed to, say, 6,500 skilled independent visas, 189, or 190 visas, 11,200, or even 491 visas, 11,200. So employer-sponsored visas blows everything out of the park. And that's because I think immigration is putting a more bigger emphasis on employability. And it's going to link permanent residency to employability. So, if you're an engineer of some sort, or, we work in information technology, what they want to see is that, you're employable in Australia. Because if you're employable, you're not going to be a burden on, the social welfare system or the medical system. You're actually going to contribute. You're going to pay your taxes. And more importantly, you're going to fulfill skill shortages, and help Australian industry and help the Australian economy. So, don't discount employer-sponsored visas. I know everyone's looking at, general skilled migration, but employer-sponsored visas are going to be, the way to go. And we're processing, we're processing, 3 or 4 per week, and you really got to get yourself out there, whether it's knocking on doors, doing an internship, monitoring Seek. We've got a young Indian boy who came here on a 476 visa, and mechanical engineer, and he knocked on so many doors, and he finally got a chance with one, not even applying through a job through Seek or anything like that. He spoke to the employer. They said, yeah, we'll give you a chance. And he's been working there for about 6 years, while he was on 6 months while on the 476 visa, 6 months while he's on a student visa, because we have to revert him back to a student visa. And now the company's sponsoring as a mechanical engineer, with a salary of 65,000 to 75,000 plus superannuation. So, you've got to get the courage, to knock on doors and create opportunities for yourself. It's not going to fall in your lap, but if you do, you're going to be able to create your own luck. And how you do that is get yourself out there, and present yourself to as many employers as you can. All right, how many questions do we have, Jessica?
We have here 5, 6 questions.
All right, we're going to cap it at that, please, because the reality is we've been going for an hour now, so we're going to cap it. So please, no more questions. Sorry, guys, but we'll do these questions and then we'll move on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first question I have here is, what employers are eligible to nominate for the TSS?
Well, all employers who have got an ABN. So provided they've got an ABN, so and they've got financials, up-to-date financials, so and they have the capacity to employ a sponsored person. When we do an employer TSS visa, we submit an employment contract, which has got to be above 53,900, but depending on your occupation, could be must be substantially more. So provided they've got an ABN and they're an incorporated business, whether it be a PTY limited company, a trust, a partnership, then they're eligible to sponsor. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. And Virginia is asking why some big companies have a policy not to give sponsors, which is the risk for them.
Well, look, it's very rare, to be honest, but some companies do have that type of policy, or I guess, what they're probably trying to do is, I guess, fulfill their positions with Australian graduates who have graduated from university or from trade school. I guess one of the risks is, there's quite a big investment when you think about the SAF levy, and if it's a big company, then and their turnover is more than 10 million, then the SAF levy is 1,800 per year, and if you're talking about a TSS visa over 4 years, the upfront cost is 7,200 just to the SAF levy, and that's on top of your agent fees and your nomination fees. So that could be a deterrent. Also, I guess if you're on a sponsored visa, one of the obligations or sponsorship obligations is if for whatever reason your sponsorship discontinues, then the sponsor needs to pay for your airfares home. So that could be a deterrent as well. The other thing is, I guess, it just sometimes, it just depends on the business, but it's quite rare that a company will have that policy, but it does happen. But you've got to look at the advantages as well. If someone sponsors an applicant for the TSS visa in a long-term stream, then they retain that employer for 4 years. So it's a win-win situation, and that employee can, after 3 years, apply for permanent residency. So there are some companies that have a policy of not sponsoring, but I think that's a rare. It's a rare sort of. There's much more companies that do sponsor than don't.
Mhm. Okay, great. Next question is by Juan. So Juan is currently on a 4A5.
Yep.
And he's already got a skills assessment granted as an industrial engineer.
Yep.
So he just wants to know if he has some experience that is so actually he's asking if should his experience be strictly related with industrial engineer. He's been working as a supply chain analyst and distribution center coordinator, and he's trying to validate that experience with Engineers Australia. If this is granted, can he apply for the 482?
Yeah, look, 100%. That's usually what what we sort of recommend our clients as well. Industrial engineer, process engineer, supply chain. I know there's a lot of overlap, but that would be my recommendation as well. If you can validate his employment with Engineers Australia, they're the authority on engineering occupations. Then most definitely he could use that work experience towards a TSS visa, nominating the occupation industrial engineer. With the TSS visa, it's not as strict as the 186, so there is a little bit more flexibility there. But yeah, most definitely, if you could validate that work experience with Engineers Australia as an industrial engineer, then 100%, I'd be supremely confident, then use that experience for a TSS visa, nominating industrial engineer for sure.
Okay. And the next question is also regarding a skills assessment for the 186. So Camilo is an electrical engineer draft person.
Yep.
He's wondering if he needs this skills assessment for the 186.
Absolutely, 100%. If he's nominating that particular occupation, then he'd have to have a skills assessment for sure, because it's a requirement of that occupation. So not just does he have to have a skills assessment, he's going to have to show that he's got 3 years work experience post, I would believe it, I think it's an advanced diploma, the qualification required for that. Otherwise, if he can't fulfill the 3-year work experience requirement and he can't provide a positive skills assessment, his other option would be, I guess, a step down. It's a medium to long-term occupation, so he could apply for a TSS visa. After working for 3 years on the TSS visa, he could transition to PR, or when he actually accumulates 3 years work experience and has that skills assessment, if his company agrees, whenever that time happens, so it can be before the 3 years of transitioning, he could apply for direct entry with that employer or another employer.
Okay, perfect. Next question is by Gang Dadhar. He's saying that he's 34 years old and have 15 plus years of experience in welding.
Yep.
So he's done the PTE skills assessment, and he's just asking about help with the 482. He needs an offer letter.
Well, he doesn't need an offer letter. He needs an employer that's prepared to
Employer.
sponsor him. He needs a job. Yeah. So we're not a recruitment agency, but yeah, I guess, is he in Australia or is he overseas?
Not clear in the
Yeah. Look,
question.
my recommendation would be to organise an appointment, and then if he's got any a consultation, and if he's got any employers that are considering sponsoring him, then by all means we can speak to their employers and talk about the process and the requirements of the employer. But yeah, definitely for a TSS visa, you need a job offer, and you need the company to nominate you, and yeah, support your application. That's why it's called an employer-sponsored visa.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the next question is kind of related.
Mm-hmm.
It's about any advice on how to find an employer that is willing to sponsor.
Yeah, well, like I said, you got to knock on doors, make applications, as many as you can. Look, you'll be surprised. Look, I guess the main thing for international students to, and this is what I always talk about with my clients as well in consultations. You really got to, you might be the best welders. Okay, well, not many welders. English isn't that important, but you might be the best electrical engineer out there, but the reality is, if your English level is no good, you're not going to be able to have the confidence first, to articulate your credentials in a job interview, and maybe even if you do get a job, to perform your job at the level that you want to, because without the English level that you need or require, it's going to knock down your confidence. You won't be able to express yourself. So English. It's the most important thing, because even in an interview, you're able to articulate and express yourself and sell yourself. Because I'm sure there's a lot of talented people participating in today's registration, with event with 2-3 years work experience in their home country. And believe it or not, you're going to be very desirable in Australia. We're having a shortage of, we haven't had people coming from overseas since March 2020. I think so. That flow of overseas workers has come to a halt. So Australian companies are crying out for good quality employees, and they're not going to discriminate. Whether they're overseas people or Australians, they just want quality workers. You've got to be able to knock on doors, express yourself in English. The better your English is, the more opportunities you're going to be able to create, and the better you're going to be able to perform, which is going to create even more opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was all.
All right, awesome, guys. So thanks everyone for attending. A great session, great questions. Thank you to yourself as well, Jessica, for your help.
Thank you.
So look, keep an eye out on our social media channels, Facebook and Instagram. We've got regular updates, testimonials, success stories, immigration updates. So please keep an eye out and follow us on social media. We'll be sending an email to all participants, a free assessment. So again, I implore you to also monitor your junk mail, and then whoever fills out the free assessment will also follow up with a free 15-minute consultation. But there's a process before we get to that free 15-minute consultation. You've got to fill out the assessment form, but we'll be sending you relevant links to today's webinar. We'll also be sending you free assessment, and then a free link for 15-minute consultation. If anyone's got any urgent requirements, please don't hesitate to book an initial consultation, because it's going to take some time before we follow through in that process. It's $110 for student visa holders, $165 for all other visa holders. It's a 45-minute consultation, and we'll be able to strategize and work out your best visa pathway. Thanks again, everyone. I hope.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep safe. Not hopefully we're out of lockdown sooner rather than later. And keep your chins up. And I wish you all the best. And it's been a pleasure talking to you all. See you guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.